This is a short story produced by StoryStream called The Thanksgiving Outbreak, created by Christopher A. Lee and narrated by Brian Young. Thank you for listening to this story. If you could leave the name of the city you are listening from, it might randomly get picked for our Zombie Snapshot series. And if you enjoyed this short story, please like and subscribe to the channel. Chapter 1, Blood and Gravy. The aroma of roasted turkey, buttery mashed potatoes, and spiced apple cider filled the air of the old farmhouse on the edge of Willow Glen, a quiet rural neighborhood where each house sat on half an acre. Children played in leaf piles, and the biggest scandal was whose dog was digging up whose garden. Inside the farmhouse, the warmth of a dozen bodies mixed with the clinking of silverware and overlapping laughter. A long wooden table groaned under the weight of steaming casseroles, pies, and platters, while generations gathered, cousins tossing green beans, uncles pouring bourbon, aunts adjusting the thermostat, and Grandma June at the head of the table with her signature white curls, pearl necklace, and thousand-yard stare. No one noticed it at first. She hadn't blinked in over a minute. Her hands trembled just slightly, hovering above the silver carving knife she'd polished that morning. Her face was pale more than usual, and her lips slightly parted, whispering nothing. "Grandma?" One of the younger girls, Emily, tugged her sleeve. "Are you okay?" Grandma didn't respond. The laughter died down a notch, like a record slowing. Forks lowered, heads turned. Everyone stared at her, waiting for her usual Thanksgiving toast, some old family story about the Dust Bowl, and surviving on canned corn. But her eyes had clouded over. The whites stained a faint yellow, and a thin trail of drool ran down her chin, pooling beside the gravy boat. Then she stood, or tried to. Her knees buckled as she pushed the chair back with a hard screech. She slammed her hands onto the table to steady herself, fingers curling unnaturally, knuckles popping. "Mom!" Uncle Gary, her oldest son, stepped forward. "You all right?" Her lips moved again. A raspy wheeze wheeled out of her throat. Then her body jolted forward. The scream came from Emily. Grandma June lunged across the table, knocking over a tray of stuffing and slamming her teeth into Gary's neck. The sound was horrible, skin tearing like wet paper, blood spurting across the pumpkin pie. Gary dropped like a sack of cement, his legs twitching as she gnawed into his carotid, chewing through muscle and bone. Chaos exploded. Chairs toppled. Plates shattered. Someone screamed, "Call 911," and someone else yelled, "Get the kids out!" But it was all swallowed in the panic. Blood smeared the floor as Gary writhed and gurgled. Grandma June stood up, face soaked in red, teeth clicking and blackened. Her eyes were no longer human. People tried to help her. That was their first mistake. Aunt Martha ran to pull her off Gary, but June turned like lightning and bit deep into her cheek, tearing away a chunk. Martha screamed, face half gone, clutching the wound as blood gushed down her floral blouse. Her feet slipped in the gore and she fell backward, landing with a crack that silenced the room. Grandma shrieked, a guttural, animalistic howl. I had frozen until then, just stood there at the bathroom hallway, a plate of stuffing in one hand and a roll in the other, jaw slack. But when Grandma turned her eyes on me and hissed, really hissed like a feral thing, I dropped the plate and bolted into the bathroom, slamming the door shut and locking it behind me. Gunshots, 1, 2. Someone must have brought their hunting rifle. Screams, glass shattering, then silence. Not total silence. There were still the gurgles, the thumps, the wet sounds of flesh being torn. Someone was moaning. Someone was sobbing. I backed away from the door, chest heaving. "My name's Colton, 27, mechanic, quiet, always the one in the family who'd sit at the kids' table to avoid awkward adult questions. I never expected to be the one hiding in the bathroom while my family was slaughtered at Thanksgiving dinner by our sweet old grandma. The window behind the toilet was small, barely wide enough for a person. I ripped the curtain off and shoved it open. Cold air rushed in, the smell of leaves and smoke and distant pine replacing the metallic stench of blood that now filled the house. I hesitated. My boots scraped on the toilet lid as I climbed up, balancing awkwardly. Outside, the backyard stretched into a patch of dry field, the remnants of an old chicken coop near the fence. Beyond that, woods. A loud bang came from the hallway. Something slammed into the door. My breath caught. The knob rattled violently, the sound of long, dragging fingernails on wood sending shivers up my spine. I turned and shoved myself through the window, my shoulders barely squeezing past the frame. I dropped hard into the dead grass outside, landing on my side with a grunt. From the bathroom window, I heard a soft moan. A face appeared. Cousin Danny, except not. His face was pale, lips blue, blood caked around his mouth. His eyes were wrong, like a film had grown over them. He opened his mouth, but no words came out, just a low, guttural groan and the grinding of his teeth. Then he vanished. I didn't wait. I ran. Past the coop, past the old tire swing, past the rusted fence into the trees. My breath puffed in white clouds. The world felt too quiet, like the air was holding its breath. I could still hear the echo of chaos behind me. Screams, breaking glass, and a sickening chorus of moans. My hands shook. Blood not mine was on my sleeve. I had to think. Had to get somewhere safe. Cell phone? I patted my pocket. Gone. Probably left it on the counter while grabbing pie. I ducked behind a tree and peeked back toward the house. The back door was open. Figures spilled out, stumbling, their arms twitching. Uncle Rich, Aunt Linda, even little Emily. She moved differently now. Her small legs twisted unnaturally as she staggered through the grass, head tilted sideways, a trail of red across her little yellow dress. My stomach twisted. They were all dead. No, worse. I turned and kept moving through the woods, trying to find a path, a road, anything. The sun had already started its descent behind the trees, shadows long and clawing. I could feel the cold creeping in, but I didn't stop. My boots crunched over twigs and frostbitten leaves. Every sound behind me made me flinch. Eventually, I found the road. County Road 7. It was deserted. A single pickup truck was parked halfway off the shoulder, one door open. Headlights on, no one inside. I approached cautiously, keeping low. The interior was too clean. The keys were still in the ignition, engine idling. A rifle was cradled in the passenger seat. I looked around, heart pounding. No bodies, no blood. I climbed in, locked the doors, and grabbed the rifle. It was loaded. Whoever had left this must have run or gotten taken. I didn't have time to mourn. I didn't have time to think. I just drove, past dark fields, past abandoned mailboxes. Every now and then, I'd see someone stumble onto the road, bloodied, slow-moving arms twitching. I didn't stop. I couldn't. By the time I reached the next town over, it was dusk, and the whole world was falling apart. Chapter 2, Smoke on the Horizon. The truck's tires crunched over loose gravel as I pulled off the main road, just beyond a bent, "Welcome to Maple Hollow" sign, barely lit by the dying glow of dusk. I had been driving for nearly an hour, adrenaline barely holding me together. I wasn't sure what I expected to find in town: rescue, order, a safe place to hide. What I found instead was smoke. Thick, black plumes rose from several points across the horizon, curling into the sky like fingers clawing at the stars. Streetlights flickered, half dead, casting the neighborhood in strobes of sickly orange and deep shadow. The roads were littered with overturned garbage cans, an abandoned shopping cart, and one mangled deer that looked like it had been half-eaten. I slowed to a crawl near a hardware store with broken windows. The neon open sign buzzed faintly even though no one was around to keep the lights on. My hand stayed close to the rifle on the seat beside me. The air had changed. Gone was the crisp autumn smell. Now it reeked of burning plastic, charred wood, and something else. Something wet, rotting, and wrong. I needed shelter, somewhere with high ground, locked doors, and hopefully, food. I pulled the truck behind a partially collapsed shed next to a mom-and-pop bakery and killed the engine. The silence that followed was crushing. I grabbed the rifle and slid out, closing the door quietly. There was a 2-story house across the street, modest pale blue with shutters barely holding on. The front door was wide open, swaying slightly in the wind. A dark trail stained the porch steps, almost black in the low light. I moved toward it slowly, eyes scanning every corner, every parked car. Inside the house, furniture was toppled. The television in the living room buzzed static. A shattered bowl of cranberry sauce stained the carpet like dried blood. I stepped around it and made my way to the stairs, pausing to listen. Creaking, upstairs. I raised the rifle, thumb hovering over the safety. Another creak, then silence. I backed out. I wasn't ready for another horror show. Not yet. Instead, I circled to the kitchen and found a backpack. It was already half-packed with canned goods and a half-full water jug. Someone had the same idea as me and left in a hurry. I snagged a flashlight from the junk drawer and bolted back outside, heading toward a better option. The old water tower on the south edge of town. I remembered it from a high school trip years ago. Steel ladder, locked hatch halfway up. If I could reach it, I could hole up there for the night. I moved fast, sticking to backyards and alleyways, cutting across a cemetery where fog rolled low like smoke clinging to the grass. Gravestones jutted out like broken teeth. As I passed a marble angel, I heard something behind me, a groan, then another. I turned and saw them, two figures at the edge of the fog, dragging their feet, arms limp at their sides. Faces pale, jaws slack, soaked in blood. I didn't wait.
I ran.
Through the cemetery gate, across a street littered with shredded, stuffed animals and a cracked stroller, heart hammering in my chest. By the time I reached the water tower, my legs were on fire. The ladder stretched up like a spine against the dark sky, slick with moisture. I climbed. Halfway up, I paused and looked out over Maple Hollow. Fires burned in at least 3 spots, one near the school, one where the gas station used to be, and another where houses bled smoke into the sky. The town wasn't dead yet, but it was dying. Then I heard it.
A scream.
Not from a zombie, a real scream. Human. It came from the street below, near a cul-de-sac of townhouses. I squinted through the dark, flashlight off. A girl, maybe 15, running full speed. Her jeans were torn, blood on her shirt, not hers. She was clutching a bat. Behind her, one of them was chasing her. Fast. Wait, no, not just fast. Too fast. Its legs didn't bend right, like a deer with broken bones. But it sprinted on all fours, limbs jerking and twitching, mouth wide open, teeth like needles. Its head pulsed like something was moving inside its skull. Hybrid. First one. I slid down the ladder without thinking. My boots hit the ground hard, and I sprinted toward her. Over here, I shouted, waving one arm while raising the rifle. She heard me and darted toward my voice. The creature didn't stop. It shrieked a horrible, shrill cry that sent a chill through my entire spine. I aimed and fired. The bullet caught it in the shoulder. It spun, screeched, and kept coming. Blood sprayed in the air, thicker, darker than human. The girl dove past me, rolling into a bush. I lined up again and fired twice more. One hit it in the neck. It stumbled, then charged blindly into a parked car, hitting it so hard the alarm went off. That gave us a second. "Get up," I yelled, grabbing the girl by the arm. We ran together back to the tower. By the time we reached the ladder, the creature had vanished. We climbed in silence, hearts pounding, until we reached the hatch. Inside was cramped, just steel, bolts, and echoes, but it was safe. I bolted the hatch and slumped against the wall. She sat across from me, breathing hard, eyes wide. "What the hell was that thing?" she asked. "No idea," I said. "But that wasn't like the others. I've seen them. They're getting weirder." One had no mouth, still tried to scream at me. I stared. "What's your name?" "Abby," she said. "You?" "Colton." We sat in silence for a minute, catching our breath. "I was at my friend's house," she whispered. "Their parents got sick 2 days ago. No one believed it was real. Then today, they just started eating each other. I ran." I nodded. "Same, my grandma turned during dinner." Abby's eyes widened. "Jesus!" We sat like that for a while, passing a bottle of water between us. The sound of distant sirens fading into nothing. Below, the town burned and howled. The night swallowed everything else. Sleep didn't come easy, but it came eventually. And with it, dreams of blood, screaming, and Grandma June's eyes. Chapter 3, The Tower Falls. When I woke, the air inside the water tower was cold and metallic, thick with the smell of rust and damp steel. My body ached from sleeping upright, the rifle still clutched in my lap like a newborn. I blinked, disoriented for a moment, before the sound brought me back to reality. A low, rhythmic groaning, not just one voice, hundreds. I sat up fast. Across from me, Abby was already awake, curled against the far wall, eyes wide and alert. "They've surrounded us," she whispered. I scrambled to the hatch, unlatched it carefully, and pushed it open a few inches. The metal creaked. Then I saw them. Zombies, hundreds of them. They filled the field around the base of the water tower like a slow-moving, rotted tide. Their arms twitched. Heads rolled lazily side to side. Some dragged broken legs behind them. Others were crawling, using only their hands. They circled and bumped into one another like livestock around a trough, drawn by some shared instinct to the scent of life above them. No words, no plans, just a wall of death. I shut the hatch again slowly. "They're not going anywhere," I said, my voice tight. "We're completely surrounded." "For how long?" Abby asked. I didn't answer. We both knew the truth. Unless something changed, we'd starve or be forced down into them. Then a sound carried over the moans.
Heavy.
Thudding. Thump, thump, thump. We looked at each other, then back to the hatch. I opened it again, just a crack, and peeked out. From the tree line emerged 2 monsters. Zombies, yes, but mutated, warped by whatever hell-born sickness was inside them. Easily 10 feet tall, hunched like apes, their skin gray and stretched over swollen muscle and sinew. One had arms that reached nearly to the ground, dragging long, thick claws through the dirt. The other's face was completely gone, just a smooth surface with vertical slits where the eyes and mouth should have been, pulsing like gills. Hybrid zombies. Custom horrors built by Nightmare. They stepped over the slow-moving horde like kings wading through peasants, shoving regular zombies out of the way. The infected didn't seem to mind. They gave way without resistance, as if something in their diseased brains knew these things were higher in the food chain. "They're coming for us," I said. Abby looked at me, her hands gripping the aluminum water bottle so tightly I thought it might bend. "What do we do?" "Pray they don't know how to climb." But they didn't need to. When they reached the tower's base, the hybrids didn't even hesitate. One placed its massive shoulder against the support beam and shoved. The entire structure groaned beneath us. Bolts popped. Metal screamed. My stomach dropped. Another shove. The tower tilted a few degrees. I grabbed Abby by the wrist. "We're getting out of here, now!" I flung open the hatch and pulled her with me onto the top of the tower. The steel surface was curved and slick with dew. Wind bit at us from all sides. "We're jumping," she shouted. "No, we're sliding." The tower lurched again. Below us, the hybrids stepped back and gave one final push together. A metallic crack echoed through the valley like thunder. One of the support legs buckled, then another. The tower tilted hard. We slid, screaming, across the dome as the entire thing collapsed beneath us. Gravity took over. We were flung into the air, weightless for a breathless second. Then we hit the earth like thrown dolls. I blacked out for a second or two, just long enough for reality to blink. When I came to, I was lying on my back in the mud, air punched from my lungs, ears ringing. The remains of the water tower lay crumpled behind me, one side crushed inward like a soda can. Abby groaned nearby, coughing, but the real sound was the moaning. The undead horde had turned toward the noise, toward us, and the hybrids, both still standing, were stalking toward the wreckage. I forced myself up, vision swimming, blood running down my cheek. My shoulder was dislocated or close to it. I grabbed Abby's hand and pulled. "Run!" We didn't look back. We sprinted through the smoking remains of a fence, into a dried-out drainage ditch, then up the side of a hill choked with weeds and dead brush. I didn't know where we were heading, just that it had to be away. The moans followed, a choir of rot and hunger. Behind us, the heavy footsteps of the hybrids thundered, shaking the ground like distant drums. We crossed a field and broke into an old orchard rows of skeletal trees wrapped in morning mist. My legs burned. My sides screamed. But we kept running, ducking between trunks and hopping over broken irrigation lines. Eventually, the sounds grew fainter. We collapsed behind a stone wall on the far end of the orchard, hidden under some wild ivy. I could barely breathe. Abby was shaking. "They're not supposed to be that big." "No, they're not," I said, spitting blood into the grass. "But we're alive. How long do we run before we can stop?" I looked up at the gray sky, clouds churning. "As long as it takes." We stayed there for a while, silent except for our breathing. Eventually, I peeked over the wall. The orchard was still, no movement, no sound. "Let's find somewhere safe," I said. She nodded, wiping a tear away. "Yeah, before the next monsters find us." We walked west, away from Maple Hollow, away from the tower, toward whatever hell the rest of the world had become. Chapter 4, Hollow Fields and Hollow Faces. We walked in silence for nearly an hour, following old service roads that cut through fields once full of life, now abandoned, windblown, and strangely colorless. Abby limped slightly, cradling her elbow. My shoulder felt like it had been smashed by a sledgehammer. Still, we kept moving. The hybrids were somewhere behind us. Their heavy footsteps had faded, but that didn't mean they weren't following. Maybe they were hunting by scent, maybe by sound, or maybe they were herding the shamblers, acting like twisted shepherds over a mindless, rotting flock. We didn't speak of it. We crossed a broken wooden fence into an overgrown wheat field. The golden stalks were dry and tall enough to swallow us, perfect for staying hidden, but also perfect for an ambush. Every few feet I stopped and listened, the rifle raised. Just the wind.
And then,
Buzzing. Low constant, not insects. "Do you hear that?" Abby asked, pausing. I nodded. We crouched, pushing the stalks apart slowly until we found its source. A tractor. Still running. It sat in the middle of the field like a fossil left behind, engine sputtering. Driver's side door open. A figure slumped over the steering wheel, motionless. The scent hit us then. Blood, rot, and diesel fuel. I raised the rifle and crept closer. The man behind the wheel had half his head missing. A shotgun lay across his lap. His fingers were locked around the grip, but the barrel had been turned inward. A suicide. "I guess he saw what we saw," Abby said, voice flat. I reached into the cab and turned the engine off. The buzzing stopped. Silence swallowed the field again. We searched the back of the tractor and found a cooler warm, but filled with bottled water and vacuum-sealed jerky. Nearby, in a satchel strapped to the frame, I found 3 boxes of shotgun shells and a pocket knife. He wasn't planning on going far, I muttered. He probably had a place in mind but gave up. We didn't take the time to bury him. We just closed the door gently and walked on. The field narrowed as we approached the far tree line. Power lines stretched across the sky above, humming faintly, leading to a structure half buried in the woods. An old barn with a rusted silo and a long-forgotten farmhouse just visible behind it. We stayed low and quiet, circling wide before approaching. When we reached the barn's rear entrance, I knocked once. 3 quick taps with the rifle butt. Nothing. No sounds, no answering groan. I opened the door slowly, gun ready. The interior was dark but dry, with slats of sunlight breaking through holes in the wood. Stacked crates, hay bales, rusted tools. No signs of recent movement. No blood. Clear, I said, for now. We set up camp in the loft, behind a row of crates. The ladder creaked but held. Abby found some old horse blankets, and we laid them down like makeshift bedding. I cracked open a water bottle and handed it to her. "This is better than the water tower," she said, voice half hollow. I nodded. "Let's not stay long." That night, a storm rolled in. Thunder cracked over the fields and rain lashed the barn's roof. We stayed dry, but the sounds outside brought no comfort. At one point, I heard movement below. Not moaning, just shifting, footsteps in straw. I reached for the rifle and rolled silently to the edge of the loft, peering down. A figure stood near the barn entrance. Human. He wore a wide-brimmed hat and a poncho soaked with rain, a hunting rifle strapped to his back. He held a lantern, the glow casting long shadows across the walls. I aimed my rifle. "Don't move."
He froze.
"Hands up," I said. Slowly he lifted his arms, the lantern swinging gently. "I'm not infected," he said. His voice was calm, gruff, like someone who hadn't spoken in days. "Name's Mason. I saw your footprints in the mud." Abby joined me, gripping the bat tightly. "What do you want?" I asked. "Same thing you do, to survive." I studied him. He didn't move like one of them. His eyes were clear. No twitching, no blood. "Alone?" I asked. He hesitated. "No," he said. "Got a group. Few miles from here. Farmhouse, reinforced, clean. You two are welcome if you can handle yourselves." I didn't lower the rifle. "Why help us?" "Because this thing's bigger than we all thought. And I've seen what happens to the ones who try to go it alone." Abby looked at me. I saw something in her eyes, hope, but guarded. I nodded once. "All right, but we go at first light." Mason agreed. He slept below us, rifle in his arms. Abby and I took turns keeping watch. The storm finally passed near dawn, and the barn smelled of wet hay and earth. At sunrise we moved. Mason led us through a series of back roads and overgrown trails, avoiding every open space. He was good quiet, aware, and methodical. The kind of guy you'd want on your side in a world like this. We passed a half-collapsed school bus on its side, windows smashed. Dried blood streaked the interior. A teddy bear lay in the mud beside it. We didn't speak. Eventually, the farmhouse came into view. A large 2-story structure behind a chain-link fence, reinforced with scrap metal, lumber, and even a flipped-over pickup truck as a makeshift barricade. Mason whistled low. The front door opened and 2 figures stepped out. One held a scoped hunting rifle. The other had a machete. Both looked rough-tired, wary but alive. "This is Ellie," Mason said, nodding at the woman with the machete, "and the guy with the trigger finger is Reggie." They let us in after a check for bites. Inside, the house was fortified but cozy. A fire burned in the hearth. Bunk beds lined the living room. Ammo boxes, food crates, maps. This place had been prepped. "How long have you been here?" I asked. "Since day 2, Reggie said. "We saw the writing on the wall. Mason and I hit the sporting goods store and met Ellie in town. Started building defenses the next day." "You seen any of the bigger ones?" I asked. Ellie nodded grimly. "Yeah, we call them the tall boys. Saw one rip a car in half near Ridgeway." "There's more than 2?" Abby asked. "At least 6 we've seen," Mason said. "Some of them look different, like they're mutating, getting smarter." That made the room go quiet. We stayed at the farmhouse that night, safe for the first time in days. But safety was an illusion now. We knew that, because outside the fence, deep in the trees, something watched and waited. Chapter 5, Firelight and Fangs. The farmhouse was quiet that night, too quiet. Outside the fortified walls, the world had collapsed. Inside, we had heat, canned chili, and a moment to pretend we were still human. Mason sat at the table, cleaning his rifle with methodical care. Reggie leaned back on a recliner near the boarded-up window, smoking a thin cigar and staring into the flames of the fireplace like he could see something the rest of us couldn't. Ellie was sharpening her machete on a whetstone, each stroke echoing through the living room like a ticking clock. Abby and I sat on the floor by the fire, a blanket draped over our shoulders, sharing spoonfuls of chili from a dented can. The heat had returned to her cheeks. Her eyes didn't look as hollow. She was slowly crawling back from the edge. I wasn't sure I was. So what's the plan? I asked, breaking the silence. Mason didn't look up. We keep this place locked down. Rotate watches. One of us stays awake at all times. The tall boys don't usually come around here, but if they do, Reggie finished for him. Then we go out guns blazing. Ellie snorted. Or we run, if we're lucky. Abby frowned. Have you lost anyone? Mason paused, then nodded once. 3. Good people. One guy, Daryl, tried to bring his sister here. Got caught in a ditch full of walkers. Screamed for 10 minutes before they finished him. Abby looked down at the fire. I stood and stretched. I'll take first watch. Ellie glanced at me. You sure? You look like hell. Exactly why I won't sleep anyway. She nodded and passed me her small walkie. We use these to check in. 1 on each floor. Channel 2. Ping every 30 minutes. Don't answer if something's off. Just knock once into the mic. Got it. I stepped outside and climbed to the rooftop lookout, a small platform built onto the second-story roof, surrounded by sandbags and rain-stained wood planks. A spotlight pointed toward the fields, powered by a deep-cycle battery stashed inside a weatherproof box. I switched it on and scanned the perimeter. The wind howled across the field, rustling the grass and shifting the tree line like waves on a dying ocean. The fence creaked every now and then, metal groaning against the weight of its own rust. But otherwise, nothing. I sat with the rifle across my lap, eyes scanning the horizon. Time passed slowly. Then sometime past 1 a.m., the air changed. I couldn't explain it. Just that the wind stopped. The stars seemed to retreat and the night grew heavier, thicker.
Then I saw it.
Movement. At first I thought it was a deer, but the shape was all wrong. It was crawling low to the ground, its limbs jerking with unnatural rhythm. I swung the spotlight toward it and froze. It wasn't one, it was 2. 2 hybrids. These weren't the 10-foot tall boys. These were different, leaner, faster, twitchier. One had no arms, just long, bladed growths of bone jutting from its shoulders like mantis claws. The other was headless, but had eyes across its chest, blinking independently. They crept low to the earth, slipping through the darkness like wolves preparing to pounce. And behind them, the dead. Shamblers, dozens, maybe hundreds. They moved like sludge, but they moved with direction. They were being herded again. I grabbed the walkie and knocked once. Downstairs, I saw lights flick on. Mason's voice crackled through the walkie. You see something? They're here, 2 hybrids and a herd. Wake everyone. I slid down the roof and into the attic access. Boots hitting the second-floor landing just as Reggie rushed up, shotgun in hand. How many? Too many, he swore under his breath. Defensive plan? You hold as long as we can, Mason said, climbing up behind us. If they breach the fence, fall back to the basement and seal the hatch. Ellie passed out spare ammo. Abby grabbed her bat, knuckles white. The next few minutes were a blur of positioning and breathless silence. Then the first one reached the fence. A shambler, arms dragging, its bloated stomach split open and spilling brown sludge. It pressed against the chain-link wall, moaning. Then another.
Then 10.
The hybrid stayed behind them, directing, pacing, watching. Then they attacked. The headless hybrid lunged forward and scaled the fence like a spider, its chest eyes blinking rapidly, limbs flailing. Reggie opened fire, blasting it with buckshot. The first round staggered it. The second blew out its chest. It shrieked, high-pitched, rattling, alien, and fell into the horde. The other hybrid charged. It moved like lightning bones clicking, claws flashing. Mason fired, hitting it in the knee. It dropped, crawled, then disappeared behind the barn. That one's not done, he said. The fence buckled under the weight of the dead. They pressed and climbed. One slipped through a bent corner and limped across the yard. Ellie met it with her machete, slicing clean through its neck. Hold them, she shouted. But the wall failed. The fence collapsed inward. Dozens poured through, groaning, twitching, grasping with clawed fingers and exposed bone. We fell back to the house. The front door slammed shut. Reggie and Mason braced it with furniture. Then we fought. The window shattered. Hands reached through. One caught Abby's shoulder. She screamed. I shot the arm off. Blood sprayed the wall thick and black. I dragged her to the stairs. Basement, now! We retreated floor by floor, covering each other, shouting, bleeding. The hybrid returned. It burst through the kitchen wall like a battering ram, flinging debris and howling with rage. Its mantis blades glinted in the firelight. Mason fired, missed. Reggie tackled the thing tackled it, buying us seconds. It stabbed him through the chest. He fell without a sound. Reggie, Ellie screamed. But we had to move. We got to the basement. Mason slammed the hatch, bolted it. Everything went silent. We sat in the dark, breathing hard. Reggie was gone. But we were alive.
For now.
Chapter 6, Beneath the Floorboards. The basement smelled like damp earth and old regrets. The floor was dirt-packed and uneven, littered with crates, water jugs, and broken furniture pushed into corners. A single bulb dangled overhead, flickering weakly as the generator sputtered somewhere upstairs. Ellie paced back and forth near the bolted storm hatch while Mason sat on an overturned bucket, both hands gripping his knees. His face was blank, empty. Abby sat in the corner, curled against the stone wall, bat across her lap, eyes glued to the ceiling like she could still see Reggie's death playing out above us. I leaned against the support beam, rifle in hand, blood drying along the sleeve. None of it was ours, not yet, but we were close, too close. They got him, Ellie finally whispered, breaking the silence. Just like that. Reggie. Gone. I didn't answer. Mason stood. We need a plan. This place won't hold forever. They'll figure it out. They? Abby asked. You mean the hybrids? Mason nodded grimly. They're learning, hurting the shamblers, targeting strongholds. I've seen it. They took down a ranger station 2 towns over, used a fuel truck as a battering ram. They're evolving, I muttered. Exactly. And if they know we're down here, it's only a matter of time before they rip this place open. Ellie kicked a nearby crate, sending a cloud of dust into the air. Then what? We go outside? Into that? I spoke before I realized I was thinking it. We go under. They all turned toward me. There's a root cellar. I saw the blueprints in the attic before I took first watch. There's an old tunnel, probably a drainage escape from when this place was built in the 1920s. If we find it, it might take us beyond the fence line. Mason nodded slowly. You sure? No, but it's better than waiting to be clawed apart. We lit lanterns and spread out. The basement was bigger than I realized. Cracked foundation walls extended into 2 side rooms filled with tools and gardening supplies. Rats scurried through holes. Water pooled in corners. I found it behind a stack of firewood and old wooden hatch, half buried in dust and cobwebs. The handle creaked as I pulled it open. A tunnel, maybe 3 feet wide, sloped downward into darkness. Ellie peered over my shoulder. No way I'm crawling into that thing without knowing what's at the other end. Mason stepped forward. We don't have a choice. You heard that thing. It was tearing through walls. It's smart. We wait here. We die. I dropped into the tunnel first, rifle slung over my shoulder. It stank of mold and rot, the walls lined with old bricks slick with condensation. The ceiling was barely tall enough to crawl through on hands and knees. One by one, we followed it. Every scrape of a boot against stone echoed forever. The tunnel seemed to stretch for miles, though I knew it couldn't have been more than 100 yards. The further we crawled, the more the air shifted, less rotten, more earthy. Then we saw light, a faint orange glow spilling through a broken metal grate ahead. I crept forward and peeked through. The tunnel exited into a collapsed drainage ditch near a dried-out creek bed. Smoke drifted in the distance, and the moans of the horde were distant, now muffled by trees and terrain. We pushed the grate aside and climbed out one at a time. My body ached from the crawl. My back screamed. But we were out. The farmhouse was still visible through the woods, just barely. We saw what was left of it. The hybrids had torn down an entire section of wall. Fire flickered in one corner, likely from the chimney collapsing. The undead spilled through every opening like termites. Ellie turned away, fists clenched. Reggie bought us time, I said. Let's not waste it. We moved into the woods. By mid-morning, we found a hunter's shack small, with faded camo tarp draped across one side and an open-air porch facing a marsh. It was abandoned, but not long ago. The fire pit out front still held warm ash. Inside, we found canned food, fishing gear, and a CB radio with a cracked casing. The antenna was snapped, but Mason said he could try to fix it. We secured the shack as best we could, wedging a dresser against the door and stringing fishing line with bells around the perimeter. Primitive, but something. We ate quietly. Afterward, Mason went to work on the radio. Ellie cleaned her blade. Abby slept for the first time in what felt like days. And I sat on the porch, rifle across my lap, staring into the trees. That's when I heard it. Voices. Not groans, not screams. Voices. I stood fast and waved Mason over. He joined me, listening. Then we both heard it through the trees, faint but real. A man and woman shouting, footsteps, a baby crying. Survivors, Mason said. Or bait, Ellie muttered, stepping outside. We debated it for a minute too long. Then the woman's voice screamed, Help, please, they're coming! We couldn't ignore it. Weapons ready, we moved through the brush, staying low. We found them near a dried creek, 2 adults, late 30s, blood-soaked and panicked. The man held a pistol. The woman clutched a crying baby wrapped in a muddy blanket. We're not infected, the man shouted as we approached. We need help. Follow us, I said, motioning, quickly. But then I saw them. 4 more hybrids. Different this time, shorter, pale, hairless. Their jaws unhinged like snakes, and their hands ended in serrated claws that clicked with anticipation. "Run!" I screamed. We all bolted for the shack. The woman stumbled. Mason scooped her up without a word. Ellie fired a shot, catching one of the hybrids in the throat. It didn't fall. It screeched and leapt, tackling her into the brush. "No!" Abby turned, swinging her bat. "Abby, keep moving!" I fired twice, clipped another hybrid. The pack scattered into the trees, fast and quiet like insects. We reached the shack. Mason burst through the door, the woman sobbing in his arms. I pulled Abby inside and slammed the door. Ellie didn't make it. We waited, rifles raised, but no one came. Not her. Not the hybrids. Nothing. Just whining, crying. Another one gone. Chapter 7, The Weight of Mercy. By the time the rain came, we had boarded up every window of the hunter's shack. Water trickled through the seams of the tin roof, tapping a rhythm above our heads like a slow countdown to something worse. Ellie was gone. No scream, no death rattle. Just silence. 1 minute she was fighting back. The next. She was part of the forest. Abby sat in the corner, curled into herself. She hadn't spoken in hours. Her bat leaned against the wall, forgotten. She just stared at the baby, now bundled in a spare flannel shirt, nestled in a repurposed fishing crate. The baby had stopped crying. Now it just stared back, blue eyes blinking beneath a mop of dark curls. Mason paced near the radio, still fiddling with wires, his jaw tight. "Signal's weak. I might be able to boost it with copper wire or a car antenna." The man we rescued, Todd, sat at the far end of the shack with his back against the wall, pistol loose in his lap. His knuckles were white. His wife, Hannah, rocked silently beside the crate, hands trembling as she hummed to the child. We were all waiting for something to break. It didn't take long. Todd spoke first. "There's something you should know." Mason turned slowly. "Go on." He didn't look up. "The baby, Jamie, she was bitten." The words landed like bricks on a brittle shelf. "No," Hannah whispered, clutching the crate. "You promised you wouldn't." "She was bitten," Todd shouted, now standing. "On the leg. It's swollen. Turning black." Silence dropped like a curtain. I stared at him, then at the baby, still silent, still watching. "No fever?" I asked. "Not yet," he said. "But we've seen what happens. The incubation in kids is longer. Hours, maybe a day. But it's coming." I turned to Mason. He stood still, hands at his sides, eyes distant. "No," Hannah said, more to herself than anyone else. "She's not turning. She's fine. She's fine." "She's not fine," Todd snapped. "And if we wait too long—" "Don't you say it!" Hannah screamed. The baby began to wail again. Mason stepped forward. "We have to talk about options." "No," Hannah said, "but please, she's all we have left." "We have to be smart," Mason said, his voice a gravel scrape. "If she turns while we're sleeping, we're done." "You're talking about killing a baby," I said quietly, not looking at him.
He didn't respond.
Todd looked between all of us. "I can do it, if it comes to that." "No," Hannah said, "you won't touch her." Todd's hand drifted toward his pistol. I caught it and slammed it away with the butt of my rifle. He stumbled, and for a second, I saw murder flash across his face. But then it vanished. He fell to his knees beside his wife. "I'm just trying to protect us." Abby finally spoke. "We don't know she'll turn." Mason sighed. "We've all seen it, Abby." "Not in babies," she said. "We don't know." "What if she's immune?" I asked. "Don't give her false hope," Mason muttered. "She's not a threat yet," I said. "And until she is, we don't make that choice." Todd looked up at me. "And if you're wrong, then I'll do it," I said, staring right into his eyes. "Not you, not Mason, not her mother. Me." Everyone froze. The baby cried again. That night, no one slept. We took turns watching the baby, each of us staring too long, looking for a twitch, a shiver, a sign of fever. But nothing came. She drank warm water from a soaked cloth. She whimpered but never screamed. At 3:22 a.m., Mason pulled me aside. "Let's say she is turning," he whispered. "What do you really plan to do?" I meant what I said. "She's just a baby, Colton." "I know." He studied me for a long moment. "You'll never come back from that? If it happens, let me do it." "No?" He didn't argue further, just nodded once and walked away. Morning came gray and wet. We ate in silence. Abby had the baby bundled in her arms. Her face was softer today, calmer. "I think she's okay," she said. I wanted to believe her.
I really did.
Mason reassembled the radio and powered it on. Static. A buzz. Then, "This is Site Echo 12. Repeat, Site Echo 12. If you are receiving this broadcast, coordinates will follow." We all froze. "Aquam, this is a secure military location. All civilians advised to avoid major roads. Hybrid activity confirmed across multiple sectors. Site Echo 12 remains open." "Military?" Todd asked, eyes wide. "Sounds like it," Mason said, scribbling down the coordinates. roughly 70 miles north, maybe 2 or 3 days hike. Abby smiled for the first time in days. We could make it, but I couldn't smile. I was still staring at the baby's leg. The swelling was worse. We voted that afternoon, not to kill her, to move. Tonight, while the hybrids were distracted, the broadcast would draw others. We could use that chaos. We'd take only what we could carry. Mason had a map. I'd carry the baby. Abby would stay at my side. Todd and Hannah would follow. Mason would take rear guard. We packed in silence. Before we left, I held the baby one last time under the dripping eaves. She looked up at me. Not a flicker of rage, just life. Fragile, quiet. Maybe it wasn't a bite. Maybe it was something else. Or maybe this world had no more room for mercy. Chapter 8, A Price for Hope. We left the hunter's shack just before sunset, cutting through the marshlands like shadows. Every footstep soaked in mud and tension. The baby Jamie was wrapped against my chest in a blanket, secured with a rope I'd knotted into a makeshift sling. She was quiet now. Too quiet. The swelling on her leg hadn't improved. Her tiny body was burning up. She's just teething, Hannah whispered earlier that day, wiping sweat from the baby's forehead. All babies get fevers. No one answered her. We marched north, following deer trails and forgotten back roads, moving parallel to the grid. Abby kept close beside me, glancing down at Jamie now and then with anxious hope, while Mason swept behind us, rifle ready. Hannah and Todd walked a few yards ahead, silent. The kind of silence between people who know something is breaking but are too afraid to say it out loud. We didn't speak of the fever. We didn't speak of what we would do but we all felt it in our bones. We made camp that night inside the rusted remains of an abandoned RV tipped on its side in a dry creek. It smelled of mold and mouse droppings, but it had 4 walls, and that was enough. We used trash bags and spare shirts to plug the broken windows, then lit a single candle to save battery power. Hannah held Jamie while Todd dozed beside her, pistol in his lap. Abby and I huddled at the other end. She's not crying anymore, Abby whispered. She doesn't have the strength, I said. Abby's lip trembled. She's only a baby. I nodded slowly. That's why it's going to kill all of us if she turns. Mason sat at the cracked booth seat, unrolling the map again under candlelight. We're 12 miles from Echo 12. If we push hard tomorrow, we could make it by nightfall. Through what terrain? I asked. Thick forest, some hills. One open field we'll have to cross. Exposed.
Yeah.
The candle flickered. Then the baby coughed. Wet, hoarse, something gurgled beneath it. Hannah jolted, rocking her gently. Shh, shh, my sweet girl. Mason and I locked eyes. I saw it in the shift, the decision. Not yet spoken, but already made. I stood, quietly walking out the rear hatch of the RV. Mason followed me. Abby came too, arms wrapped around herself. I know that sound, Mason said after a moment. That rattle. I heard it before. At the firehouse during week 1. Same cough before the turn. Abby stepped forward. We don't know. You don't know how it affects infants. Mason stared at the woods. That baby's going to change. Soon, and when she does, it's going to be fast. Strong. No, Abby whispered. No, you don't get to decide that. I'm not deciding, Mason said. I'm surviving. You're talking about killing an infant. He didn't flinch. I'm talking about preventing a massacre. I stepped between them. If anyone lays a hand on her, they answer to me first. Mason's jaw clenched, but he backed off. Don't wait too long, Colton. We've already lost too much. That night, Abby took the first watch. I laid with Jamie on my chest, her breathing shallow, skin hot to the touch. I stared at the ceiling of the RV, my own heart pounding in rhythm with hers. She stirred once, gurgled again, then a twitch. Her fingers curled unnaturally. Not like a baby reaching, like spasms. Involuntary. Her eyes fluttered open, cloudy, milky. I sat up slowly, blood draining from my face. Her lips pulled back. Her gums were red, her baby teeth clenched. Then she bit at the air. A dry snap. No, I whispered. Another twitch. Arms jerking now. Her head lolled sideways. And for a moment, her baby's face contorted, not into a cry, not into pain, but something more animal. Instinctive. I pulled the blanket over her mouth, held her close. Abby came to my side. Colton! She's turning, I said, tears burning behind my eyes. She's gone. No, she said. No, she's just sick. Don't do this. I have to. I stood and walked to the rear exit. The cold night air washed over me. I held Jamie to my shoulder, her small body twitching gently under the cloth. Mason stepped out from the woods. I saw, he said.
I nodded.
She's going to kill them in their sleep. I know. Do it. I didn't answer. Then Hannah screamed inside the RV. I spun, rifle up. Too late. Todd's voice screaming, She bit me! She bit me! Inside, Hannah cradled Jamie, blood pouring from her neck. Todd was on the floor, his arms shredded and bubbling. Mason pushed past me. Abby screamed, "No!" 2 shots. One for Todd, one for Jamie. Silence. Hannah collapsed onto the floor sobbing. "No, no, no, no!" Abby fell beside her, crying uncontrollably. Mason lowered the rifle. "I told you not to wait too long." Chapter 9, Cracks in the Walls. We didn't speak for the rest of the night. No one said Hannah's name. No one asked if she was okay. By sunrise, she was gone. No note, no sound, just gone. The RV door was slightly open, dragging in the breeze, and the wet grass outside had one clear set of footprints vanishing into the tree line. "She's not coming back," Mason muttered as he cinched his pack tighter. "People don't come back from that kind of pain." Abby stood beside me, her face hard. She hadn't said a word to Mason since the gunshots. Not even a glance. We all knew what had happened. We just chose not to say it. We marched on in silence. The woods seemed darker now, colder, like the world knew what we had done. It took us hours to find the edge of the tree line. When we emerged, the sun was overhead, casting light onto a broken road lined with utility poles and collapsed wire fences. This was the edge of a town name unknown, forgotten like everything else. Mason found us shelter in a 2-story colonial house with its front door torn off, but the interior largely intact. We barricaded windows, moved furniture against the stairwell, secured the basement hatch with a thick pipe jammed through its handles. "This is it," Mason said flatly. "We hold here. One night. Then we move for Echo 12 at dawn." No one replied. I looked at Abby. Her face was unreadable now, the spark in her eyes dulled by too many deaths. I knew that look. I wore it too. We made a fire in the living room with broken chair legs and a trash can lid. The flames danced across the walls, casting long shadows behind us. I sat by the window, keeping watch. Abby sat alone near the stairs, her bat across her lap. Mason sat at the dining table, cleaning his rifle again, methodical and slow, like it was a ritual. And that silence again, the kind of silence that fills the lungs with poison. Eventually, Abby stood. "I don't forgive you," she said coldly. Mason didn't look up. "Didn't ask you to. You murdered a baby." She was turning. "You don't know that." He looked at her then. Really looked. She bit her father's face off. She was sick, not a monster. "I've seen this before," he said. "You'll see it too. It doesn't get better. It doesn't go away. You shot a baby and her father in front of her mother." I stopped the spread. "You killed Hope." He stood slowly. "Hope is what gets you killed." I stepped in between them. "Enough." Mason stared at Abby. "When that thing came at you in Maple Hollow, you didn't hesitate to swing that bat. Don't act like you wouldn't have done the same if you'd seen her eyes." "I would have waited," Abby snapped, "because that's what people do for each other. You wait too long, you die screaming." Abby walked away. Mason sat back down. And I sat with the weight of everything, wondering how much of me had already died before the world ended. That night, I took first watch again. The front porch creaked beneath my boots as I stepped outside. The air was cold, too still. I swept my rifle along the tree line. Then I heard the bells. Not church bells. Tripwire bells. Faint jingles from the front yard, followed by one deep, dragging moan. I turned to the door, kicked it open. "They're coming!" Mason was up instantly, locking the front and yelling for Abby. I climbed to the second floor, opened the side window, and looked out. The moonlight was dim, but enough. They were coming. Hundreds of them. Shamblers staggering through the streets and across lawns, bumping into cars and fences. Slow but relentless. And behind them, a shape. No, not one. Three. 3 hybrids. One with twisted limbs, twitching like a marionette. One with a bloated torso and a ribcage fused into armor. And the last, taller than any I'd seen, hunched like a giant silverback, dragging a steel fence post behind it like a club. They weren't just wandering. They were moving together. Purposeful. Coordinated. "They're breaching the south side," Mason yelled from the front hallway. I ran downstairs. Abby stood in the living room, bat clenched tight. Mason shoved furniture against the window as glass shattered around us. Hands reached in gray, bony, twitching. He fired. Abby screamed. Then came the sound. Boom! The front wall exploded. A section of drywall and beams collapsed inward as the largest hybrid slammed through it, swinging its makeshift club. It roared no, bellowed like a bear. Mason opened fire, emptying his clip into its chest. It staggered, then rammed forward again, knocking him clear across the room. Zombies poured in behind it, moaning and snarling. Abby swung her bat, taking 2 down. I fired from the stairs, trying to cover her. But it was no use. We were overrun. I saw Mason go down, blood spraying from his side. I saw Abby vanish beneath a wave of arms and teeth. I don't remember deciding to run. I just remember the window, the back one in the kitchen. I smashed through it, hit the ground and ran. No looking back, just breathe. Heart. Terror. The house disappeared behind me in the dark, swallowed by moans and screaming and firelight. I didn't stop, because there was nothing left to stop for. Chapter 10, Into the Smoke and Sun. The sky was on fire behind me. Not literal fire, but the kind that painted the treetops in copper and blood. The kind that told you the sun was setting and the world was ending. I ran until I couldn't feel my legs, until my lungs were sandpaper and my throat burned with each breath. I didn't look back. Not when the screams echoed through the woods. Not when I heard Abby cry out for help. Not even when Mason's rifle cracked 3 times and then went silent forever. There was no one left to save. And I was done trying. I stumbled through a tree line and collapsed onto the edge of an open field, half dead with exhaustion. My heart thudded in my ears like war drums. Behind me, the town burned and the shamblers screamed. Somewhere in that fire, my old life was dying its final death. The field was wide and overgrown, bordered by a rusted fence and a forgotten dirt path. And there, tucked in a clearing beside a splintered wooden shed, was a miracle. A dirt bike, red frame, faded by years of sun, propped on its side stand, as if the world hadn't ended at all. Next to it, an old lawn tractor John Deere with vines crawling up the tires. Strapped to its back was a green plastic gas can. I dropped to my knees beside the dirt bike and twisted the cap. Empty. Of course. I crawled to the John Deere, pried the gas can free and shook it. Slush. I almost cried. My hands shook as I uncapped the can and poured the gas into the dirt bike's tank. The sweet, acrid smell filled my nose, nostalgic, alive. I wiped my face with my sleeve and stood up, twisting the cap back on tight. That's when I heard them. First the groans, then the snapping of twigs, then the scream, a high-pitched animalistic screech echoing through the trees. Hybrids, at least 2, maybe more. I turned. Figures moved between the tree trunks, fast and twitchy. Shadows that shouldn't move the way they did. One of them shrieked again, closer now. Too close. I jumped onto the bike, kicked the starter. It sputtered.
Once, twice.
The shadows closed in. Branches cracked. I kicked again harder. The bike roared to life, coughing blue smoke and fury into the air. I twisted the throttle. The tires spun in the dirt, kicked up grass and gravel, and I tore down the overgrown path like the devil himself was at my heels. The wind slapped my face. The engine howled like freedom. I dodged fallen trees, bodies, wrecked cars left to rust along the road. My rifle clattered against my back. The gas can bounced in the bike's rack. The world blurred around me. Everything behind me. Maple Hollow, the water tower, the hybrids, the farmhouse, Abby, Reggie, Ellie, Mason, the baby, even Grandma June. All of it became a ghost trail of memory and smoke. I didn't stop. I didn't dare. I passed a looted gas station, a flipped bus with blood-smeared windows, a Help Us sign nailed to a telephone pole. No people, no answers, just echoes. The sun dipped lower behind the hills, bleeding orange across the sky. The shadows lengthened.
Then I saw it.
A long, cracked stretch of highway leading into the mountains. No signs, no exits, just forward. I pulled over to the shoulder for a moment, engine idling, and looked back. The horizon was thick with smoke. I could still hear faint moans. One hybrid scream cut through the distance, inhuman and sharp, carried by the wind like a war cry. They were still chasing me, but they wouldn't catch me.
Not tonight.
I revved the engine. I could feel the vibration through my bones. No family, no home, no group left. But I had this machine beneath me. I had gas. I had air. I had movement. And for the first time since Thanksgiving dinner turned to hell, I had choice. I took one last look at the burning world behind me. Then I gunned the throttle. The dirt bike shot forward, tires grabbing the asphalt, engine screaming like a beast finally loosed from its cage. I didn't know where the road would lead. Didn't care. I didn't need a map anymore. I just needed a way. The sun kissed the last edge of the hills as I rode. And in its glow, for just a moment, the world didn't seem dead. Just waiting,